All right, I'm going to talk about Colin Thompson a little bit. Let's start with the ending here, which is repeated throughout. We got a slight change this year, took out a flam, right? Yeah. So remember, nice heavy downbeat on that ending. Then on the left hand, don't pop that sucker too much, it's just a not so mezzo. And then make sure and stick that drag right before the singles nice and soft, and do not crescendo through the singles, right? And this ending is different from the one in Annie Anderson, where we're decidedly ending on a little bit of an accent, right? Out of those, we have a singles run coming to an accent. Here, we want the ending to be nice and even, no pop at the end. Otherwise, I think we just need to watch that three-stroke a little bit, make sure that we're executing that three-stroke exactly the same every time. Getting just the right amount of dot and cut in there is critical. I know last year we kind of intentionally were rounding things out a bit. Justin had us playing a little bit more round. We're gonna dot cut that up a little bit more with Ross at the helm, because he is a little bit more dot cut in his expression. So watch that. So we're gonna wait just a touch longer before that three-stroke. Let's just give it a couple times there. Ready? And go. And now you do notice between my drag and my singles run there is that slight little gap. I do like that there. We don't need to have that drag dead right on those singles. Let's actually have that tiny little gap. Okay? All right, so other things in this first part. We know we want to start it off strong, so nice heavy downbeats in both the first and second and third bars. Then just pay careful attention to the dynamics throughout the rest of that first phrase. I don't want us to hit the fourth measure, the left hand flam. I don't want that to be as heavy as the downbeats have been throughout that first phrase. Otherwise, I think we've been playing it pretty well. Just watch the dot cuts, especially in the dot cut 16th notes. Let's try that first phrase, 2. Ready, and go. Again, ready, and go. Yeah, so that third and fourth bar. You notice I'm coming up pretty heavy on that left-hand 6, but not as heavy on that following left-hand flam. One more time. Okay, I'm trying to be real consistent with my treatment of those drag singles throughout, so make sure that you're playing consistent too. All right, so then the next 2 bars, this is where we had a little change also. The reason I changed this sticking a little bit was to try to avoid, in the second bar of this second line, playing that cut to the next dot, playing that quite so smushed together. I think we've been over smushing that, right? So here, note that is only a mezzo forte flam in there too. So watch that second bar. Don't overdo that first dot and squish up the flam to the next note too much. All right, so let's do that little 2-bar phrase in the second line. Ready, and go, and. That was a bit heavy on the flam. Ready, and go, and. Okay, watch in the first bar. Let's not come up at all on that flam and drag into the single, right? Okay, whole first part once. Ready, and go. All right, let's go into the second part. Really watch on these pickups into the second part. Let's not overplay the pickups. They should be a medium. Going into the downbeat is nice and heavy. And then we got to come right back down for that left hand Radamacue. Try it again, ready, and go. This second bar is a change from last year too. Instead of a flamadiddle, it's now a flam to a 3-stroke. So you're going to want to make sure and emphasize that change, that we're waiting as long as we need to get into that 3-stroke. Try that 2-bar phrase again. Ready, and go. And go. Okay. Then through the next 2 bars, what I really want to focus on is the trislet. You got to keep that trislet really nice and succinct, I want to say, and then hold that next tiz roll as long as we can, so that we can have good swing going through those back-ended singles that have that left-hand accent. Try that 2-bar phrase there, really trying to stretch out the tizzes. And go, and you see how I held on to that tiz so that it could put those singles as far to the back of the beat as we could. One more time, ready, and go, and go, and go, and okay, really try and accentuate that syncopation there. Okay, next 2 bars. The accent coming out of the first measure into the second, right? I really want, there's not a crescendo or decrescendo here. I want that left hand accent to be nice and heavy, and then the right hand lead single coming off of that next single to be nice and heavy. Here's what I mean. All right. Now when we come out of that singles run, it's only a mezzo forte accent, so it's not as loud as the downbeat in the ending. Try that whole phrase. Ready? And go. And go. And go. And right, again. And go. And okay. Let's try the whole part. Because the second ending is just the same as the first part there, so we don't need to fix anything there. Second part, ready, and go. Alright, third part. The key to this one is keeping continuity as we go through it, not letting the tempo drag at all. Just keeping on these nice and light on the paradiddles. Let's not over accentuate anything. Just let it flow right along. Don't interrupt the flow. First 2 bars here. Ready, and go. And again, and go. One thing I've noticed is a tendency to play that left-handed 6 on the downbeat too heavy. Instead of, we tend to play, I don't want that heavy downbeat. We want it to go booze, look at that, right? We want to have it nice and soft on the downbeat. All right, so then the 3rd and 4th bars here. So again, we're sticking with the nice, no humongous dynamics here. I know it's marked as forte coming down in that 4th bar. Probably an overstatement. We don't really need to come up to forte there. I think it would interrupt that phrase too much. Let's try that whole 4-bar sequence. Ready, and go. All right, and then coming out of that, out of this part, then the next line. Not much to talk about, just make sure we don't come up on that left-handed cheese into the singles, right? That's one of those movements, it's really easy to over prep, and so it looks like we're trying to accent it. And I think that has the effect of making us play it too tight, actually. One thing Blair always hammers on me in my solo lessons is with those particular phrases, we should play them as if we don't even have a flam in it. You wouldn't feel like you had to prep a whole bunch if you didn't have a flam in it, right? For some reason, playing a flam there makes us feel like we got to play it heavy. Play it the same as if you had no flam. Just add that little grace in there. Again. All right, and the last part. Nice and open in the flamadiddle going into it, right? And then we got to go right from that nice and open to a nice closed and very controlled drag into the roll movement. Now that fourth bar, we'll treat it exactly the same as we did in the second part. Stretch the crap out of that tiz roll so that we're right on the back end of the beat through those singles, right? I don't think I have too much more to hit on in that fourth part. The key to hitting that, I think, is in this context, especially in the fourth part going into that fourth measure, we have that right hand lead roll, right? The left hand release of that roll is critical to get into the trizlet on the right. Okay, so the third and fourth bars there. Let's try that a couple times. Ready and go and not bad. Ready and go and ready and go and go and. Now I know you guys have it tough in the single, in the accompaniments there. Whenever we have one of those, it's really easy to crush the crap out of that last single. We gotta maintain that open, or else it's just gonna crash and burn. I actually only want to give that one a couple more weeks here, and if it doesn't gel, then I'm gonna change that complement out because I think it's one that's really, really hard to execute cleanly. Let's try that whole 4-bar phrase there, fourth part. Ready and go. Sorry, I kept going. Yeah, the change in the next 4 bars, the 5th and 6th bar of the part, pretty subtle change. I think it fits the pipe part really nicely. It is actually really close to what we did up in the second part, first time through. So try and mimic that. Now I haven't written it also it's forte on those accents like I did in the second part. I think I want to leave it as written so that we are actually crescendoing into it here, give it a little bit more shape than we did in the second part. I don't want it to seem like we're playing the exact same thing, even though the rhythm is just about the same. Let's do that that whole line there. Ready? And go. And again, don't forget to leave room to come up to the downbeat in the ending. Don't accent that note coming out of the singles in the second bar too much so that you don't have room to give a nice solid forte into the ending. Let's try the whole last part here. 2, both times through. 2, ready and go.